in the spring of that first season at Curtis, I read in the paper that Koussevitzky was opening a school called Tanglewood at the Berkshire Music Center, and applications would be considered. So I armed myself with these letters from Roy Harris, Aaron Copland, William Shure, you know, the same old the 3 letters. And I went to Boston and had an interview with Koussevitzky. And that's when I first met him. It was in the green room of Symphony Hall. It was so grand, and I was so shaking. And he said, "Oh, you study with Fritz Reiner. Very interesting." Then he read the letters, and he said, "You know Aaron?" And, wonderful composer, wonderful. I said by mistake, wonderful, I agreed. Which I thought would eliminate me forever, but didn't register. He suddenly said, "But of course I accept you in my class." I didn't have to play the piano, do anything. Just on the basis of letters and, I don't know, personal, because we obviously loved each other on sight. Mm-hmm. And so it was. He became my father instantly. And so I went to Tanglewood that summer of 1940, and every week the student-conducted class had to play something with the student orchestra. It was a regular weekly thing. And I had just arrived there. This is the first week. And my assignment turned out to be the Randall Thompson Second Symphony. All of it, not just a movement. Usually you had a movement or something because there's so many people in the class. No, the whole Second Symphony, because of course he is your teacher in Curtis, and he was sort of favoring that piece at the moment. So that was the first piece I ever conducted under Koussevitzky's aegis at Tanglewood. And it took a lot of doing. I'd never conducted an orchestra anywhere before. When this was before a public, and you rehearsed and came to concert and so on. It was the first time I ever did such a thing, and it was in the first week. And Randall was there, and it wasn't easy. And I remember particularly when we got to the scherzo, which was in 7/4 time, and it's a little tricky. It's not really, I mean, but then it seemed tricky in those days. That was, after all, 41 years ago. And I remember sitting in bushes, hiding in bushes, studying the score all day so I wouldn't be disturbed by friends or people walking by, learning this piece with all my might, and then coming to rehearse it with Koussevitzky sitting there because he was the conducting teacher. And he'd observe the rehearsal, then we'd have a private session. Everyone in the class did. But it was obvious from the beginning that we were the relationship. We loved each other. And till the day he died in my arms. That was an incredible relationship. In 51, so we had 11 years.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a lovely touch that later on you recorded that symphony with the Philharmonic.
I love it still.
Wonderful
but
piece.
It was a huge thing to do for your first student concert. Everybody else had something like the second movement of the New World Symphony or the finale of something or other, 7th Beethoven. But I had the whole Randall Thompson. And when it came to the scherzo, which was in 7, because he was sitting there in this great cape, you know, on the stage of the shed, and I was trying to get them through, to teach them. The whole thing is in that. It's just, it doesn't change. Mm-hmm. But once you learn 1-7-4 bar, you've learned them all. But in trying to teach them that pattern, I remember Koussevitzky getting up and saying, "No, Kinder, you see, what Lenishko tried to tell you is Ya tahaim, tahaim, tahai dam, dam," missing the whole point of the syncopation.
Yes.
You understand it is 3 plus 4. Yam tahaim, tahaim, tahai da, dam. And it's not tahai dam, dam at all. It's dam, da, da. I didn't say anything. it made it very much harder for me to teach them the syncopation,
Of
which was the
course.
whole point of the little jazzy thing in the scherzo. But I got over that. That was one thing, because he couldn't teach me. I could teach him about jazz.
American syncopation.
And years later, when, not so many years later, 8 years later, when he conducted the premiere of My Age of Anxiety, and I was at the piano, he had terrible trouble with the jazz movement, the mask. He couldn't beat it, and I had to have special sessions with him at the piano and show him.
Mm-hmm.
I was again teaching him, see, about that. And he said, Lenishka, it is very difficult. You know why? It is not symphonical music. It is a jazz. It is not for a symphony. Why you not write different scherzo? Make different scherzo. I said, it's too late. This is the piece. And it's all bound up with the rest. And I said, it's just, you know, it's not really hard. If it's just, we went through for hours, and he finally got it, and he said, you know, Lenishka, it is a jazz, but it is a noble jazz. And that, for some reason, he had convinced himself that he could now conduct it.
Yes.
Because it was noble.
With dignity.
You know. So he went through yabba dabba da, toot toot, toot toot, as though he were conducting God knows what of Beethoven, Mrs. Celebes. And it was quite wonderful. And thus the premiere of Age of Anxiety happened. Now,